Maxey from outside. Sixers lead, courtesy of Tyrese Maxey.
Deep to left field, going back is Locastro. It is gone!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. This is your host, Ryan Coyle, as always, and as I like to say, the show goes on, continuing on with our college football preview series, episode 6 today, hitting on the Michigan Wolverines, the reigning national champions from last year. If you missed our first 5 episodes, we've hit on LSU, Memphis, Nebraska, Colorado, and Penn State so far. So going back to the Big Ten today and touching on last year's national champion, 15-0 Michigan Wolverines, a dominant run from kind of start to finish. I think they only had 3 games that were decided within single digits. So this was a dominant team last year for sure from start to finish. Won the national title game convincingly over Washington as well. But I think going into this year, this is like the least talked about reigning national champion I can remember. I mean, I've been saying this going back 2-3 months now, that this Michigan team, I'm not necessarily saying flying under the radar. I think I saw today the Big Ten poll came out and they were projected to finish 3rd, I believe. So they're not necessarily super flying under the radar, but, you know, last year's national champion, you would kind of expect them to be talked about at the top there, at number 1, number 2. They're definitely considered behind Ohio State and Oregon there in the Big Ten, but we'll get into everything. We're going to break down the new head coach, Jerome Moore, go into a recap of last year, how last year went so well, the offense, the defense, and then dive into this year a little bit, my schedule prediction for them and what I'm expecting out of this Michigan Wolverines squad for the 2024 season. So big news from the offseason coming out of Michigan, Jim Harbaugh obviously departing the program and going to the Los Angeles Chargers to be their head coach. Jerome Moore takes over, and Jerome Moore never been a college head coach before, except last year in the interim for 4 games as Harbaugh was out due to the sign stealing scandal. Jerome Moore steps in, leads them to a 4-0. They don't really seem to miss a beat, and he wins the games against Penn State as well as Ohio State, their 2 biggest games of the regular season. He'd been on staff at Michigan, though, since 2018 under Harbaugh in numerous roles. But last year was the offensive coordinator, O-line coach, and as we just touched on, 4-0 as an interim head coach there as well last year at Michigan. So a guy that has seen it all. He saw what Jim Harbaugh built, and it was kind of shaky there at the beginning in the Harbaugh era. I mean, I think after 2020, there was real kind of belief that he might not even keep his job. But they were really able to kind of flip the script, turn it around there, and bring Michigan back to glory, and that's what Harbaugh set out to do. You could argue why he left. Maybe he just wanted to win that title, go back to the NFL, or some potential suspensions or other modifications or rules against this Michigan team going forward, sanctions. That's what I was looking for going forward that could come down on the program that he wanted to avoid. But he did what he set out to do. He won the national championship, and then he turns the program over to Jerome Moore, who it seemed like only 38 years old. He was kind of grooming him to be the next head coach there. So Jerome Moore takes over for Jim Harbaugh. But as we said last year, a historic year, not just for Michigan, but for college football. This was a truly dominant squad last year from start to finish. 15-0, beat Washington in the national title game 34-13. So won the national title game by 3 touchdowns. Last year, Michigan won 11 of their 15 games by double digits. They led the country in turnover margin at plus 19. But a lot of key pieces depart, such as Jim Harbaugh, head coach, but also quarterback J.J. McCarthy, running back Blake Corum, and more. They return only 5 starters this year on the squad, 1 on offense, 3 on defense, and their punter. Michigan had 13 players drafted last year. That is the 4th most in a single draft from one college in NFL history. So a team that was loaded with guys with plenty of NFL talent. They go out and they prove that, win the national title, and you can't really accomplish much more than Michigan did last year. These guys depart. They go to the draft, and now they turn the leaf into a new era of Michigan Wolverine football here with Jerome Moore taking over. So we'll get into what the offense is going to look like and kind of what it looked like last year and what we might see this year, but it's not that big of a overall kind of system change or a culture change. I think whatever Sherrod Moore was taught and instilled by Harbaugh, sure, he's going to have his own flavors and his own wrinkles in the way he coaches and the way that they call plays, but the system that they run. But he's really going to be kind of running what Jim Harbaugh really taught him to do, showed him to do, and showed him the way. So for an offense for a team that was so dominant last year, the offense didn't have like crazy overwhelming statistics. Like we talked about in a few episodes ago, the LSU episode where that offense was truly crazy. Number one in total offense, number one in points, like super historic dynamic offense. The offensive statistics for this Michigan squad last year weren't really overwhelming. They were 14th in the country with points per game, 35.9 points per game. So that's obviously good, especially with how good their defense was. You're going to win most games when you're able to put up that much points. Obviously indicating that they go 15-0 there and win the national championship, but the statistics weren't really that overwhelming, and I think it's because the defense was so good. But this also was a team that kind of ran it up on time of possession in games, so they weren't exactly throwing the ball around the yard. That obviously that's going to hurt your passing numbers and your total offense, and they did rely on the run game a lot. But also a team that had such a good defense, got such good field position last year, where sometimes you weren't even really needing much yards or big plays to make some damage and score some points. So offensively, they were 54th in rushing, 81st in passing, and 67th in total offense. Like I said, I expected those numbers to be a little bit better, but the defense was so dominant, and it was a team that just kind of played bully ball and ran up the time of possession and just really leaned on teams and won with the running game with Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, and J.J. McCarthy there in the running game as well. But they were 15th in time of possession, 32 minutes and 14 seconds per game. J.J. McCarthy at the quarterback spot did his job. He protected the ball. He had a 22-4 touchdown to interception ratio, and he played efficient enough ball to lead Michigan to an undefeated season in the system. There will be a camp battle, though, at the quarterback spot from everything that I read and heard this year between seventh-year pocket passer Jack Tuttle and then a guy that's basically the complete opposite in him in junior Alex Orji, who's a really good athlete. We saw him get kind of mixed in last year as well in the run game. But he's a really good athlete and a super good runner. As good of a passer as McCarthy that he showed in flashes, probably not, at least right now. But he's a freak athlete that if Michigan does want to be, a run first team again this year, which I fully expect them to be, Orji's a really good, another asset in the running game there to go alongside Donovan Edwards. He's a 6'3", 235-pound quarterback. But the quarterback spot is a mystery for now. It sounds like it is going to be a true competition, but I expect them to lean towards Orji. Maybe week one, I think they're playing Fresno State. Maybe those guys, play a half each, and then they decide who they want to be the starter going into week two, where they host Texas, which is going to be one of the best games of the season, probably ratings-wise. But I expect them to have that quarterback situation sorted out by then. But I do expect both these guys to play in that week one game against Fresno State. When you look at the backfield, running back Donovan Edwards takes over as the lead guy. After Blake Corum was the lead guy last year, Donovan Edwards was kind of the secondary back, the complementary back. He would be the back later in games a lot as well, with his ability to be a physical runner and just kind of wear down teams. But he takes over in the backfield. He should thrive, I think, given the opportunity to be the featured back. He has over 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns on the ground in his career at Michigan, and that's in a limited role. So I expect with a larger role this year for Donovan Edwards, for him to step up and have even more production. Colston Loveland, I think he's going to be the first team All-American tight end. He's going to be a force, one of the best tight ends in the country. He was third in receiving yards last year for this team that it was a predominant run team. He's going to be that number one option, I think, in the passing game this year. So look out for Colston Loveland there. The offensive line, though, entirely new. Not one returning starter on this group, which I think would be a concern for most programs. But Sherrod Moore, as we were touched on, was the offensive line coach the past few years at Michigan. He knows how to develop. They know how to recruit guys up front. I have no real concerns there. They're just going to usher in, a bunch of new 3, 4, 5-star guys that might have even done some work in the portal to add. We'll see. I assume, though, with 5 new spots open, it's going to be an open competition kind of throughout camp. I'm sure they have their guys that they want to be the starters, but it's going to be one of those things where they got to go out and earn the job. I'm pretty sure from what I've been looking into. I am very worried, though, and I think this is where the last year's team certainly had a leg up on this year's squad. The receivers, this year's receivers, they don't really have any established guys, any guys that I think are, at least as of right now, striking fear into opposing defenses. Maybe as you get into the back half of the season, you get your passing game on its feet. there could be some guys that step up, but the way that guys left the program through the transfer portal and the draft, they're going to be ushering in a lot of new faces there in the passing games. You had Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson both go to the draft, and then you had three key guys or guys that were at least going to be counted on this year in the receiver room step up. These guys went to the portal as well, and Darius Clemens, Carmelo English, and Christian Dawkins. All those guys are at the portal. So there's plenty of snaps to be accounted for at the wide receiver spot. Going to be interesting to see who steps up and kind of takes that role and becomes a more reliable receiver. But I expect this to be a very, very run heavy team again and utilize, I think, Orgy's legs in the running game. Jack Tuttle is more of a pocket passer, a drop back quarterback with a limited receiver group. I think Orgy has the leg up in the competition just because of his ability to run. So when you go to the defense now, this unit was dominant last year. This unit was the driving force to last year's national championship for Michigan, but they only have 3 starters returned from that group. So another group that is ushering in a lot of new faces. But last year's Michigan's defense ranked first in scoring defense at 10.4 points per game, fifth in rush defense at 90 yards per game, second in pass defense at 157 yards per game, and first in total defense at 247 yards per game. Just a super, super dominant group. Defensive coordinator, though, Jesse Minter, he left with Jim Harbaugh to go be the Chargers defensive coordinator. So in turn, they bring in longtime NFL defensive coordinator Wink Martindale, who was kind of the godfather, I guess, of the defense that Mike Macdonald and Jesse Minter ran these past few years at Michigan. He was kind of the orchestrator of that. And he, though, was a little bit more aggressive in the terms of he loves to blitz. He loves to bring pressure. That was his calling card in the NFL. Now he steps into a college spot where he doesn't really have, I believe, any experience there on that defense side of the ball, at least in a while. Like, he was the Ravens coordinator for a while. He was the Giants coordinator last year. He has a lot of NFL experience. I'm interested to see how his defense works at the college game and if he continues to rush these blitzes out there. But the defense for this Michigan squad has 2 players that will probably be first team All-Americans in the preseason, definitely first team All-Big Ten, in defensive tackle Mason Graham and cornerback Will Johnson. Those are 2 super experienced players, 2 key starters, probably the 2 best defensive players on last year's national championship defense, and probably 2 future first rounders as well. So 2 studs there, Mason Graham up front on the defensive line, and then in the secondary with Will Johnson at corner. You get 2 key cogs there. Those guys are going to be able to kind of hold it down, I think, and bring this unit where I don't think up a notch from last year or maybe even maintain that same level. They'll probably take a step back because last year's group was so dominant, but I don't think they're going to let this group really regress all that much. Big addition in the portal for this team was linebacker Jayshon Barham from Maryland, from what I've been reading up on. 23 starts, and he figures to be one of the best kind of sideline to sideline linebackers in the Big Ten, if not the country this year. Zeke Berry is another guy in the secondary to watch for this Michigan team. They like to play a lot of defensive backs, especially in Martindale's system. He likes to deploy a lot of defensive backs. So this is a guy in Zeke Berry to watch. He's an up-and-coming player there. But anytime you lose 8 starters, there's probably going to be some growing pains. But whether it's guys in the portal or high-profile recruits, this Michigan team is going to have plenty of defensive and offensive talent at their disposal. It's just whether or not they hit the ground running or not, and they can continue where they left off last year in that 15-0 season, or if it's going to take some adjustment period, or if maybe all these guys just won't fit as well. It's going to be a kind of a wait and see with this Michigan team, but they get tested right out of the gate with Texas there in week 2 coming to the Big House. But interested to see how this group fares and how Martindale coordinates this defense. But that's my kind of breakdown on the offense and defense. We'll get into my schedule prediction now. Let me share my screen and pull up the schedule for this Michigan Wolverines squad for the 2024 season. All right. So I have the Michigan Wolverines not repeating and going 15-0. I haven't done any playoff predictions for these teams and how they fare going forward, just kind of their regular season schedule. But I have this team going 9-3 this year. Definitely taken a step back, but it's kind of hard not to after going 15-0 undefeated national championship season. But I have them winning week 1 against Fresno State. I have Texas going to the Big House and winning that game. I think Texas is definitely a better offense. It's going to be a test for sure, a battle going to Michigan and having to face that defense. But I trust Quinn Ewers and Texas and their experience in this spot right now more than a Michigan team that lost so much last year and has a bit of an unknown there at the quarterback position. I have them beating Arkansas State there to go to 2-1. Then I have them beating USC at home. I have them beating Minnesota. I have them going to Washington in a national title rematch from last year and winning, beating Illinois, beating Michigan State, but it gets tough down the stretch. Oregon comes to Ann Arbor. I have Oregon winning that game. I think Oregon right there, neck and neck with Ohio State for the best team in the Big Ten this year, but that'll be a top 5 matchup probably if both those teams meet up then undefeated. That should be an awesome one. At Indiana, I have as a win. Versus Northwestern, I have as a win. And then at Ohio State, I have Ohio State knocking off the streak this year, getting Michigan back. I think this is Ohio State's year there in the Big Ten, but I have them going 9-3 in the regular season. That's my prediction for this Michigan squad. Step back, sure, but 9-3 after all they lost. 9-3 might even still get you in the playoff. Probably not getting you into the Big Ten title game, but you might be the 11th or the 12th team, the 10th team, wherever they put the G5 team. But 9, 10, 11, potentially see what happens in kind of the SEC. But I do expect to step back this year, and I think if you're a Michigan fan, you do as well. They do get Texas and Oregon at home, so if you're able to split those and then you do wind up losing the game at Ohio State, that's still a 10-2, very successful season. But I just don't see the same exact results with Harbaugh gone, everything they lost, only returning one starter on offense and an unknown at the QB spot. It's going to be hard to make up for. The defense should be really good again. They're going to be every game. Nothing's going to shock me if this team does find a way to 11 wins. I'm not expecting them to go undefeated. Definitely going to drop one of those big 3. But over-under for this team set at 9, so I'm kind of right there with the market. I'm not going to touch that. Plus 115 for the over. I don't think it's really worth a play. Plus 600 to win the Big Ten. I don't really like either. This is a team that I'm just not going to be placing any futures on. A lot of unknown. And as I said, I'm not going to be shocked if Sherman Moore does lead this team and they go out there and thrive, or if they do take a step back and find themselves 9-3, 8-4, 7-5. So Michigan's definitely going to be one of the major teams to watch this year in college football as always, but really interested to see their progress under Moore and kind of the direction they go after Harbaugh left. But that'll do it for this edition of the Beef Up Front podcast. As always, please like, subscribe, and we'll talk soon.